Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at an article from page number 8 of the Delhi edition. This article deals with a study that has been conducted on cereal production in India. According to the study, states which have critically low groundwater resources account for nearly 41% of India's domestic cereal production and trade. The study has shown that in these states which have critically low groundwater resources, nearly 39% of the groundwater table is being utilized for producing and trading cereals. The study has identified 6 states in India which have critical and semi-critical groundwater resources, and these 6 states alone account for nearly 21% of India's cereal exports. The findings of this study highlights the significance of water conservation and the conservation of the groundwater table. See, in India, nearly 54% of the country is facing high to extremely high water stress, especially the arid, semi-arid and the interior parts of India, such as Rajasthan, parts of Gujarat, UP, Madhya Pradesh, and the interior parts of Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and even few parts of Tamil Nadu and Odisha. They are already facing severe water shortage, and these are the areas which are also witnessing complete overexploitation of the groundwater table. This map clearly shows that these states in particular are facing severe water stress, and the groundwater resources in these states has been overexploited. Now this is quite alarming because these states also account for majority of India's cereal production. And as you all know, cereals are the lifeline of India. Cereal production in India is mainly dominated by rice and wheat, and they are predominantly the source of energy for the average Indian. Most of our energy and nutritional requirements are met through such cereals, which are an integral part of the average Indian diet. But the production of these crops is highly water intensive because cereals tend to consume a lot of water during its entire life cycle that covers production and trading. So the overexploitation of the groundwater table in these states and the lack of water conservation is a direct threat to our food security and as well as our economic security, especially in the rural agrarian areas. This study essentially highlights the connections between cereal production, water security and food security. Now let's take up a column from page number 11 which evaluates the challenges in achieving herd immunity for COVID-19 through vaccination. See, currently there are a number of vaccine candidates for COVID-19 that are being developed around the world. Pharmaceutical firms such as Pfizer, Moderna, Oxford University, AstraZeneca, and even India's Bharat Biotech, they have all developed their own variants of the vaccine, and they are currently undergoing phase 3 trials wherein the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine is being tested out. Countries like Russia, which has developed the Sputnik 5 vaccine, has already started administering the vaccine to the high-risk groups such as frontline healthcare workers. Then countries like the United Kingdom have already announced the rollout of the vaccination program. Even India has been making progress, and recently Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited various facilities in India where the COVID-19 vaccines are being developed and tested. Recently the Prime Minister has even claimed that the trials have reached an advanced stage and very soon India might be rolling out its vaccination program. In this context, senior officials representing the government have stated that the government is looking at only partial vaccination as opposed to aiming for universal immunization. This was stated by the Union Health Secretary and as well as by the Director General of the Indian Council of Medical Research. They have said that the government is looking for partial vaccination of the country's population so that a critical mass can be vaccinated in order to achieve herd immunity against COVID-19. And what is herd immunity? Herd immunity is nothing but a stage where sufficient percentage of the population has achieved immunity against a particular infection. This immunity could be achieved either through the natural course of infection or through the administration of a vaccine. According to the COVID-19 vaccination strategy that the Indian government is formulating, it is looking to partially vaccinate a critical mass of the population or a certain subset of the population in order to achieve herd immunity. But however, the writer argues that there are several challenges to achieve herd immunity through partial vaccination. The first biggest challenge is that to achieve herd immunity through partial vaccination, experts estimate that nearly 70% of the population should be covered through vaccination. Now, this itself is going to be a huge logistical challenge because in a country like India with a billion plus population, it is not going to be an easy task to distribute and administer vaccines to such a large population. The next biggest challenge is with regard to how the subset will be chosen. On what basis, on what scientific rationale will the government choose the subset? Because vaccination is also about achieving health equity. When a vaccination program is universal in nature, then it promotes health equity and it does not create a divide within the population. But if a particular subset of the population is being chosen, and if the government is looking to immunize only a critical mass of the population, then the manner in which the subset would be chosen would affect health equity in the country. So this in itself raises a number of ethical questions and ethical challenges for the government, and it will have to determine as to how the high risk and the low risk populations will be categorized and what would be the scientific rationale or the scientific basis for such decisions. See, we already know that COVID-19 particularly affects the older people and as well as those suffering from comorbid conditions. So there is no doubt that these categories would fall under the high risk category. Along with this, we have the frontline healthcare workers as well. But they constitute a very small subset of the entire population, and hence prioritizing the high risk groups and choosing them is going to pose a number of ethical challenges to the government. In order to ensure health equity and trust in the vaccination program, the government will have to ensure that the entire process of choosing the subset of the population is transparent and objective. The whole decision-making process should be based on scientific evidence, and these decisions will have to be communicated with utmost transparency to the public. Through such communication, the government will have to explain the scientific basis for its decisions, and it will also have to put in place a mechanism through which appeals could be received from the population which has been left out, and through this mechanism, crucial public inputs could also be generated. Only when such a transparent and ethical process is followed will the public trust the vaccination program, and only then the government's objective of building herd immunity through partial vaccination can succeed. Next, we cannot ignore the fact that the transmission of COVID-19 has been quite uneven within the population. Around the world, it has been noticed that a few infected individuals have spread the infection to large groups in what we refer to as the super spreader events. At the same time, it has also been noticed that a large group of individuals may not transmit the disease to others, and the scientific community is yet to identify the reasons behind this uneven spread and uneven transmission of the disease. Apart from this, there are still a number of unknowns about the SARS coronavirus too. We still don't know how long people will enjoy natural immunity after they have been infected by the disease. So in that case, the question that arises is that, should we vaccinate those who have already been infected? Do they already have natural immunity against the disease? And even if they have natural immunity, how long will that immunity last? The next challenge is that these vaccines have to be administered in frequent doses. And currently most of the vaccines that are being developed require a two-part administration. So determining the frequency of inoculation and the number of doses in itself is going to be a challenging task for the health authorities and the government. Plus the general public around the world, they have displayed a lot of vaccine hesitancy, especially with regard to COVID-19, because of the manner in which the development and testing process has been rushed through by the governments. Clinical trials are only partially helpful in determining the true efficacy and the safety of the vaccine, and its real side effects will only emerge after a large segment of the population has been vaccinated. So this might push a number of people away from the vaccination program, and hence it is of utmost importance to build trust in the vaccination program and in the vaccine itself by maintaining transparency, not just in the development and testing process, but also in the selection process of the population which would be administered with the vaccine. The next question is that of infant vaccination. Should infants who are being born, should they be immediately vaccinated? Because currently, this is the standard process for most other infectious diseases, and an infant receives several doses of different vaccines in the first few months itself, not just to protect the infant, but also to prevent the emergence of a new chain of transmission. Then we cannot ignore the fact that our governance machinery is not so efficient when it comes to immunization programs. If you look at India, we have taken several decades to achieve universal immunization with regard to several vaccines. So that being the case, we can safely assume that by the time we achieve universal immunization for COVID-19, it is going to be several years, and hence the government should come out with a well thought out strategy that is based on scientific principles in order to roll out and administer the COVID-19 vaccine. The government will also have to ensure that other immunization programs are not affected, because currently governments and health authorities are under a lot of pressure to contain the spread of COVID-19 and break the chain of transmission. Under this pressure, if the government and the health authorities divert the immunization infrastructure of other diseases towards COVID-19, then it might affect the immunization program for other diseases, and this would again affect health equity in the country. So considering all these challenges in achieving herd immunity through vaccination, it is better for the government to formulate a plan which aims for universal immunization with a transparent and objective process through which the high risk groups shall be first administered the vaccines. Now let's take up another column from page number 11, which helps us understand the tiger conservation efforts in the Malenad region of Karnataka. See, the term Malenad is an amalgamation of two Kannada words, Male and Nadu. Male in Kannada translates to rain and Nadu refers to land. So Malenad or Malenadu basically means the land of heavy rainfall, and it corresponds to the Western Ghats region of Karnataka. The Western Ghats region of Karnataka is very rich in biodiversity, and it is home to a number of threatened species of animals and birds, including the tigers. A recent study conducted by leading environmental experts such as K. Ullas Karanth has highlighted the success of tiger conservation efforts in the Malenad region. According to this study, the tiger population in the Malenad region has increased significantly over the last 45 years. It has increased from 70 to 391 in the latest census, and this is a mark of success of the tiger conservation strategy that has been used in the Malenad region. The study points out that tiger conservation efforts in the region began with zero knowledge, but it gradually evolved into a well-designed conservation program based on scientific principles. Under the conservation model, the wildlife authorities, the government institutions, and as well as environmental NGOs, they have carefully studied the tiger ecology in the region, and they have even built up an accurate assessment of the predator-prey base in the region. This has been a real boost for the conservation efforts because the accurate numbers helps in crafting the right strategies for conservation. For studying the tiger ecology and the predator-prey base, experts have made use of a number of innovative identification methods, including the careful analysis of the unique coat patterns of the tigers and other predators in the region. They have made use of modern technology such as deployment of camera traps, GPS signals, etc. to carefully track the movement of these animals. And they have even made use of data modeling techniques and software-based analysis to accurately estimate the spread and distribution of tigers and other predators and prey in the region. In fact, this is the first time in Asia that such detailed scientific analysis has been developed, and this has become a model that is being employed in conservation programs around the world, including in Asia, Africa, South America, etc. Then apart from this, the conservation strategy has also focused extensively on the anthropogenic factors. Human-induced factors such as man-animal conflict, hunting and poaching, land use changes because of infrastructure development, and even the spread of zoonotic diseases, they affect the tigers and as well as its prey base. And all these factors have been well contained under the tiger conservation strategy that has been deployed in the Malenad region. The study shows that nearly 21,000 square kilometers of landscape in the Western Ghats region of Karnataka is a potential tiger habitat. But today, less than 30% of this area is a tiger habitat, which houses nearly 391 tigers. The study has estimated that if ideal conditions are provided and if this potential tiger habitat is made use of, then potentially the Malenad region of Karnataka can house around 1,300 tigers in the wild. To take this strategy forward, the experts suggest to make use of tiger tourism as an incentive in order to encourage the local communities to adopt the expansion of the tiger habitat into adjacent agricultural areas as well. Because this is a successful strategy that has been followed by Kenya and Brazil. These countries have successfully used the benefits that arise from tourism as an incentive to encourage and motivate the local communities to provide for the expansion of habitat by including adjacent agricultural areas as well. And the subsequent rise in predator-prey population brings in more tourism into the region and thereby brings more economic benefits to the local communities. Experts have suggested that this is a win-win solution for environmental conservation and as well as for ensuring the well-being of the local communities. Because whenever conservation programs are implemented, especially in the core habitat areas, the population that resides within these reserve areas and protected areas, they are the most affected. Because when national parks and tiger reserves are set up, the population that is residing within the core habitat, they will have to be relocated and resettled, and this always becomes a contentious topic. Because most of these communities that are found to be residing in the core areas, they usually share an ancestral social connection with the forest, and it might be very hard for the government to convince them to relocate and opt for resettlement. But there are few communities as well which are more than willing to relocate and resettle because these remote areas face a number of developmental challenges. These local communities, they often face man-animal conflict, and along with that, they are deprived of quality education, quality healthcare, and as well as they lack access to sustainable sources of livelihood. So in such cases, it is much easier for the government to provide the right kind of incentives which will encourage the local population to willingly relocate and resettle, because this is absolutely critical with regard to conservation efforts, particularly that of the taiga. Because studies have clearly shown that when human population exists within the core habitats, there is bound to be a significant damage on the biodiversity of the region. So the implementation of these unique strategies has helped the Malenad region of Karnataka significantly increase its tiger population, and this could offer lessons for tiger conservation around the world. Next, we have another column on page number 11 that deals with the threats posed by quantum computing to traditional encryption. See, today, every message that we send online, every transaction that we carry out online using classical computers, it is highly encrypted. It means that the messages and the transactions being sent between two parties is highly safe and secure, and it cannot be easily intercepted by a third party. In the world of classical computers, only those who possess the encryption key, only they can access the messages and the transactions that are going on online. In classical computing, the security of messages has been ensured through various encryption techniques such as integer factorization and other mathematical models that have been developed on the discrete logarithm problem. The technical details of these encryption techniques are not relevant for our exams, but however, you should have a basic idea that these are the kind of encryption techniques that are used to keep all computer transactions safe and secure in the classical computing domain. And these encryption keys cannot be cracked or predicted by other classical computers because the calculations involved are so complex that it might take years or maybe decades or maybe centuries for a classical computer to crack these complex mathematical problems. But however, the emergence of quantum computing has directly challenged traditional encryption that is used in our classical computers. So in order to understand this, you need to understand the basic difference between classical computing and quantum computing. See, our classical computers, they function in the binary format. At the lowest level of the computer language, transactions are carried out in bits, and each bit can either occupy 0 or 1 as a binary state at any given point of time. So for example, if you take a 2-bit computer, these are the 4 different states that the computer can occupy, but binary computing doesn't allow for these states to be occupied simultaneously. At any given point of time, the binary bits can be either 00 or 01, 10 or 11. So this significantly slows down the speed of computing with classical computers. Even if you build supercomputers, they still carry out transactions in the binary state, and when very high levels of encryption are followed, it becomes almost impossible for the classical computers, even for supercomputers, to crack these encryption keys. As we discussed, classical computers, including supercomputers, might take years or even decades to crack these complex mathematical problems. But however, the emergence of quantum computing marks a paradigm shift in the way computing is done. As the name itself indicates, quantum computers exist in the quantum state. Here, instead of bits, we have something known as qubits, and they can simultaneously occupy the position of 0 and 1. So basically, quantum computing provides for the superposition of states. Two different states can exist simultaneously, and this exponentially increases the computing power of the system. So this allows for parallel computing to be carried out, and thereby quantum computers have the potential to crack these encryption keys that were primarily designed for classical computers. Hence, the emergence of quantum computers is seen as a threat to traditional encryption, and this has created the need for a new type of encryption that is being developed under quantum cryptography and as well as under post-quantum cryptography. These are two emerging domains in the field of quantum computing, and it is seeking to develop strong encryption techniques and methods which would make it difficult even for quantum computers to crack. Currently, experts are looking at a concept known as lattice structure in order to design the encryption keys, because when a lattice structure is adopted into a mathematical model, and based on this, if an encryption key is designed, then it might become impossible even for quantum computers to crack the encryption keys. See, a lattice structure is nothing but a series of points that are arranged regularly in space. In one dimension, it could just be a series of regularly spaced points. In 3 dimension, it could be the honeycomb structure, which is basically a hexagon structure. It could also be the crystalline structure of salt, which is essentially a lattice structure. So when this lattice structure is adopted into a mathematical model, and based on this, if encryption keys are developed, then those encryption keys cannot be cracked even by quantum computers. So currently, this is the focus area of research in the field of quantum cryptography and post-quantum cryptography. Next, we have a couple of columns on page number 12 and page number 13, which we have repeatedly covered in our previous sessions. On page number 12, we have a column on the socio-economic caste census. This topic has been covered in detail on the 3rd of December by my colleague, so I would request you to go back and watch this analysis and go through the column once. Next, on page number 13, we have a column related to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The OIC is an important international organization, and we have repeatedly covered this organization throughout this year. So I would request you to take this up as an exercise and read about the basic facts related to the OIC and read about India's equation with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Generally, India has a very complicated equation with the OIC because India is not a member of this grouping, and Pakistan, being an influential member of the OIC, has consistently used the platform to target India with regard to the Kashmir dispute. Recently, Pakistan has even tied up with other countries such as Turkey and Malaysia to create diplomatic challenges for India with regard to the controversy surrounding the Citizenship Amendment Act and as well as with regard to the communal riots that have been witnessed in the country. But however, India has also been making progress at the OIC, and it has been receiving support from key members such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, etc. So we have covered this analysis repeatedly throughout this year. So I would request you to go back and read about the OIC, especially the basic facts and India's equation with the organization. Now let's take up the practice questions for today. Which state in India frequently witnesses the environmental hazards of rat hole mining? The correct answer is option C, Meghalaya. See, the practice of rat hole mining is a major environmental hazard and as well as an occupational hazard. Even though rat hole mining has been banned by the National Green Tribunal, the practice continues in Meghalaya. This form of mining has resulted in several environmental disasters and human disasters in the state, and hence, as directed by the National Green Tribunal, the Meghalaya government has contributed 100 crore rupees to the Central Pollution Control Board in order to combat the environmental impact of rat hole mining. Now let's look at the next question. Which of the following terror outfit operates out of Somalia? The correct answer is option B, Al-Shabab. Al-Shabab is a radical jihadist outfit with affiliations to Al-Qaeda, and it operates out of Somalia. And this terror group is also responsible for promoting piracy in the Horn of Africa region. The other terror groups such as Boko Haram operates in Nigeria, then ARSA or the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army operates in Myanmar, and the Haqqani network, which is seen as a faction of the Afghan Taliban, operates along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. So to combat the terror activities of Al-Shabab in Somalia, the United States had deployed troops in the country, and according to this article on page number 9, President Trump has ordered a complete pullout of US troops from Somalia. Now let's take up the next question. The Personal Data Protection Bill 2019 has been drafted based on the recommendations of which committee? The correct answer is option A, Justice B.N. Srikrishna Committee. Whereas the Deepak Parekh Committee dealt with infrastructure, especially with regard to power distribution and energy sector, and the Chris Gopalakrishnan Committee has come out with recommendations for non-personal data protection. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 6, the Parliamentary Committee, which is evaluating the Data Protection Bill of 2019, has raised concerns about the exemptions that are being granted for central government agencies, which would allow them to breach the data privacy and data security of the citizens on the grounds of national security. Now let's take up the next question. Which of the following are correctly matched? On one side, we have a list of oil fields and gas fields. On the other hand, they have been matched with respective countries. First, we have Indico-2 matched with Colombia, Farsad B matched with Iran, Sakhalin-1 matched with Russia. All the three are correctly matched and option D is the right answer. These oil and gas fields are frequently in news because India's OVL or ONGC Videsh Limited is involved in these projects in some way or the other. According to this article on page number 10, OVL has discovered oil in Colombia's Indico-2 block, which is found in the Llanos Basin of Colombia that can be seen in this map over here. OVL is also involved in the Sakhalin oil and gas project of Russia in the Russia's Far East region. And OVL was also involved in Iran's Farsad B gas field. But recently, Iran has decided to drop OVL out of the project because of India's hesitation to proceed with the project as a result of American sanctions on Iran. Let's look at the next question. If India was looking at resource exploration in Angola, which of the following resources would be the top priority? Oil, diamonds, uranium, or all the above? The correct answer is option D, all the above. Angola is rich in all the three resources, and estimates indicate that nearly 60% of the country's economy is driven by oil and diamonds. This African country is also known to have uranium reserves, and naturally, India would be interested in exploring all the resources mentioned over here. Please look at this map. This is where Angola is located. It is located on the west coast of Africa in the southern part of Africa. This question has been asked because according to this article on page number 10, Angola has invited India and Indian companies to invest in its diamond mines. Please note that Angola is the third largest producer of diamonds in Africa. Now let's take up a practice question from the 2018 prelims paper. The staple commodities of export by the English East India Company from Bengal in the middle of the 18th century were cotton, silk, saltpeter and opium. Option D is the right answer. Apart from these items, the East India Company exported salt, tea, spices and as well as indigo dye. So amongst the given options, option D would be the most appropriate. Finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question, illustrate the challenges in achieving herd immunity for COVID-19 through vaccination. The second question, the tiger population in the Malenad region has increased significantly over the years. Discuss the conservation strategies adopted in the region. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the comment section below. So this concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.